Last year, he averaged 12.9 yards per target, which was the highest by any player since we started tracking this in 2006. Just to show our work, that is the best among a sample size of over 700 players going back to 2006. So before I get the insight from Louis and before I get the inside information from Kimberley, I want to first come to my wide receiver just to make clear what we're talking about, because and that is such a star-laden offense. Sometimes I don't know that Aiyuk gets talked about the way some of the other receivers do. What is the word we use, Harry, to describe Brandon Aiyuk?
Underrated. And Greeny, I believe he is one of the most underrated players in the National Football League. You talk about a guy that's explosive. 28 catches last year of 20-plus yards or more, accounted for 37% of their explosive plays through the air. But also, he's the route technician. He can run every route on the football field. He's crisp. He can get in and out of breaks. What he means to this football team is everything. And the reason why he doesn't get the attention he deserves is because you have a Christian McCaffrey, a Deebo Samuel, a George Kittle, and also a Trent Williams on that offensive line. But he is so important to this football team because he can go outside and route anybody up in the secondary, and he's that explosive guy through the air.
Well, and all those names that you just pointed out are another reason why it's not that easy to pay him.
Yep.
And that's why Aiyuk winds up sitting where Aiyuk is sitting. And so, Kmart, is he going to get traded?
So Harry just laid out why he's so important. Here's the long and short of it. He wants to be traded or paid. The 49ers don't want to trade him, and they don't want to pay him top dollar money. So that's why it's a game of chicken, right? And we're a week away from when guys are going to show up, vets are going to show up. So the question is, what happens with Brandon Aiyuk? Teams have called about him, been interested, and the 49ers, even since early in the offseason when we were talking about this story, they've said, we want him to be a 49er. He wants to be a 49er, but he wants to be a 49er at the price tag he has. Now, he has gone, on Twitter and IG Live and stuff. He's talked to his former friend, former teammate, college teammate, Jaden Daniels, who's now the quarterback with the Commanders. Those two have a great bond. They've talked about teaming up. So all of that speculation is out there. So we know there's one destination that would be happy to have Jaden Daniels. But the question is, what will the 49ers do? Would they want to move him? They don't. But at what price tag? Maybe there's somebody who's willing to give up a lot. We'll see. Well,
let me get my man who is the team builder extraordinaire, and that's my man Louis Riddick here. So, Kmart just laid it out for us. They don't want to pay him top dollar money, and they don't want to trade him. And that leaves him in a fascinating place. So, Louis, what happens now?
Yeah, look, I think, quite honestly, I think they just wait. I think they wait to see if they get an offer that they can't refuse. Otherwise, if you also heard on that, on those clips that I saw when Brandon was being talked to by the pivot, he also said, look, the team I think I'm most likely to be playing for in 2024 is San Francisco, because he understands that he can't go anywhere unless they decide to go ahead and move him. And look, I understand why he wants to be in that $30 million plus per year club. He wants to be up there with Amon-Ra. He wants to be up there with AJ. He wants to be up there with Justin. But if you look at San Francisco and you look at how they go ahead and they dole out their touches and their targets, he's just not a guy who's going to get the same volume as a guy like Justin Jefferson, who you see why they're paying him $35 million per year, because of how much he is responsible for. How much, like in Dallas, why CD would say, look, I have an argument for being the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, because look at how much I am responsible for as far as receiving is concerned in the receiving production. Now, I will say this, and Harry has laid this out, everyone has laid this out. When Brandon is targeted, look, Hembo sent me this stat, and I remember looking this up on True Media the other day. 81% of his receptions last year, 81% either went for a touchdown or a first down. That's just sick right there. That for him, he's saying, hey, look, somebody come and get me, because do you see what I could do for you if you ramp up my targets? If you put me on par with a guy like Justin Jefferson, I may blow away his production. So he has an argument. But that's not the way the business works. No. And right now, look, and they drafted two wide receivers and Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing out there. Yep. Look, they're prepared for someone to leave. I just don't think it's going to be him.
So, Louis, I would also add, we got to put into context the offensive system that San Francisco runs. The baseline of their offense is their run game. Everything comes off that. Now, that also leads to how they value their players, and that's why a Christian McCaffrey, a Deebo Samuel, a George Kittle is more valuable in their eyes than a Brandon Aiyuk, is because the baseline of their offensive system is rushing the football. And when you look at all three of those guys, they're an extension of the run game and the pass game versus an Aiyuk who's more so on the pass game side of things.
Well, so Louis mentioned it briefly. Let me play it for you here. Just within the last couple of weeks, Brandon Aiyuk was a guest on The Pivot with our guy Ryan Clark and his team there at The Pivot. And Aiyuk was talking about what he could see happening. Again, this was before he made the official trade demand, but this has been brewing for a little while. This is what he said on The Pivot.
What uniform is Brandon Aiyuk wearing in 2024?
If I were to take a guess, probably a Niner uniform. Probably a Niner uniform. I mean, if not a Niner uniform, probably a Washington Commander uniform. If not a Washington Commander uniform, probably a Steelers uniform.
Washington Commander, Steelers.
John Lynch is like, exactly, you will be wearing my uniform. Like that, I think this is a big deal because he's such an important piece of their offense. But Brandon Aiyuk understands the business, as Louis was just talking about. They don't want to trade him, and they don't want to, they have the power, the organization. But don't get me wrong, as your TV reporter, but really AFC North correspondent,
yeah,
I would love to see him with the Steelers or something else because it just makes that division more exciting. And the Commanders, too. He's got, clearly, Jaden Daniels is a big favorite.
Let me throw another team into all this, Louis Riddick, and I want to give credit to our colleague and our friend Mike Tannenbaum. When the Buffalo Bills traded away Stephon Diggs, whenever that was, it was months ago at this point, Mike Tannenbaum came on the show. I said, are they throwing in the towel? And he said, absolutely not. They can get someone in the draft, and then after June 1st, they can go out and they can try and get Brandon Aiyuk from San Francisco. He said that specifically to me. So is that a place? He mentioned, so Aiyuk just mentioned Pittsburgh. Aiyuk just mentioned Washington, and Kmart brought up the relationship between Jaden Daniels and Aiyuk, who were teammates at Arizona State. Mike T brought up Buffalo, who would love to have a veteran, I would think, to fill the shoes of Stephon Diggs. How many of those make sense to you? What do you think makes sense, Louis?
Look, I think on paper, Greeny, yeah, Buffalo would make sense. I think a pairing with him and Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir and Dawson Knox, I mean, that would be perfect. James Cook at running back, yeah, it would be. That hasn't been a team that really has crossed my mind, though, as being the team that really has the means to make this kind of thing happen. I think the team, though, in the East, in the AFC East, that does have the means to make this happen, that does have the draft capital, that does have the cap space, and is building both for the present and the future, though, is the New England Patriots. They have the cap space. They would love to have someone like Brandon Aiyuk to go ahead and continue to help a guy like Drake May continue to develop. Can you picture this? They drafted Jalen Polk this year. They drafted Javon Baker this year. They have Ramondre Stevenson. They're rebuilding their offensive line. Him with Drake May, are you kidding? If I'm New England right now, I am going ahead and I'm saying, John, what will it take? What will it take?
I get.
And if I'm San Francisco, that's a good destination for me.
Yeah, because he's out the way. Because you'll never have to see him.
Right.
I get it. I think that
and that's exactly what I would be thinking about if I was them. Yeah.
Yeah, but I need Brandon Aiyuk to think about dollars and cents. That's cool, but we're talking about, can we go to the Super Bowl? Like that's the pull of being with the 49ers. That's the pull of being with certain teams, because you have a shot. You already know from jump you have a shot to be in the playoffs and potentially the Super Bowl. Patriots, they're sort of a work in progress, but he would get paid.
I did have the Patriots on my list also. Don't rule out the Las Vegas Raiders, because Brandon Aiyuk was at Arizona State with Antonio Pierce.
And then who would that
And then
free?
if they trade for Brandon Aiyuk, that means they would potentially get rid of Devontae Adams and ship him off somewhere. Let's say New York by chance, a team that has green and white in it.
Come on now.
Keep going.
Just keep talking.
Keep talking.
I blacked out for one brief second.
That's all I got for you, Green.
You're saying you could see Brandon Aiyuk getting traded to the Raiders because he's a younger version of Devontae Adams, so they decide to pay him, and then they decide to trade away Devontae Adams to somewhere, who knows?
And get the draft capital back.
Who knows?
Who knows where that might be? Well, you remember the song, I'll Be Peaches, You Be Herb, reunited, and it feels so good.